Before Shopify, were you wondering, where are my sales at? Now you're selling with Shopify, the global commerce platform supercharging your selling. You have no problem selling online, in person, on social media, and beyond. Gary, easy on the cha-ching.
Oh, sorry, but my Shopify sales are through the roof.
Start selling with Shopify today and discover how millions of businesses around the world use Shopify to ignite their selling. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/listen. Shopify.com/listen.
Hello, Jamie here. If you've been enjoying the podcast and want to show your support, I have a brand new Patreon page, and signing up will grant you access to the Right and Wrong Discord server, where you can interact directly with many of the authors, agents, and editors who have been guests on the show. You can also interact with me and see what guests are coming up, so you could maybe suggest questions that I could ask them. Thanks again for listening, and I really do appreciate any and all support that you guys give me for the podcast. Let's get back to it.
So our podcast is called Right and Wrong.
Are these your notes?
These
Are these your notes about what we're going to say?
Anything.
Nailed it.
Is the short answer.
So how many novels did you not finish?
Oh my God, so many.
It was perfect. What's she talking about? This is nonsense.
Ooh, a spicy question. I love it.
This is it, guys. The big secret to getting published is you have to write a good book. You heard it here first. Hello, and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. On this week's episode, I am joined by author, podcaster, photographer, and early 2000s YouTube sensation, Julia Boggio. Hi, welcome to the podcast.
I love that intro. Fantastic.
I mean, it's a great claim to fame. And then I wasn't familiar with the video. Obviously, I had to look it up, and then I was like, wow, this is this is old school YouTube right here.
I know. Yeah. I mean, we ended up being like one of the first viral videos. Way back when you used to talk about viral videos around the water cooler. Now they're just a dime a dozen, you know. But
yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Before we can go down that rabbit hole later on and hear all about how you ended up dancing with Patrick Swayze on Oprah. But let's start with writing, publishing. That's what the podcast is about. You have your debut novel, Shooters, coming out. It's not out yet, but it will be out when this airs. Tell us all about it.
Well, so what Jilly Cooper did for show jumping and riders, Shooters does for wedding photography. That was my pitch line.
That's great.
So basically, it's about a woman named Stella Price, and she decides she's going to change careers because she's made some bad life choices. But she has limited funds to survive on, so she needs to start making some money fast, or else she's going to end up living back with her parents in Wales. But then the one man who can teach her everything that she needs to know is the one man she should avoid, lest she repeat the mistakes of her past. So yeah, that's it.
Excellent.
That's Shooters.
Great. It's Amazon describes it as a sassy, sizzling, romantic novel with about wedding photographers, which you used to be. Yes.
So I used to be a wedding photographer. So there is a lot of well, they say your first book is the most autobiographical.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And, my character may have started out as a medical copywriter and then turned into a photographer, but she has red hair, so it's definitely not me because I'm a brunette. Okay. So it's fine.
Yeah. She'll become an author soon as well, I imagine.
That's in book 3. Yeah.
I'm always curious about stuff like this where it's obviously inspired by, and people always say, write what you know. So it's it's a good thing to do. With, you being a wedding photographer, are there bits in Shooters that are sort of very close to things that you actually sort of saw or experienced at weddings where you were the photographer?
Yes, so there's definitely a few touches in there. So there's this one wedding that she goes to shoot, and she gets there and she's wearing a white blouse, and the wedding planner says, "No, you can't wear white. The bride has said no one's allowed to wear white." And I had that at a wedding. The bride forbade anybody from wearing white at the wedding except for her. So even just a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that was a fun detail. Stick that in there.
Those are the little things that people are like, that would never happen. It's like, well,
yeah, exactly. It did happen. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Your photography career has gone far beyond just weddings. You were creative director at a studio in London. You wrote a column for Photo Pro magazine. You won the SWPP's Children's Photographer of the Year twice in a row. What made you decide to change lanes and move into writing?
Well, I've always wanted to be a writer. So ever since I was a little kid, I've written. But I think that, I think I go back and I look at the stories that I wrote when I was younger, and I felt like I needed more life experience before I took that route. So it's been sizzling in the back. I mean, I was a copywriter, as I said, out of university. And that was kind of getting my writing yayas out. But I was a medical copywriter, which wasn't exactly, the Mad Men sort of vision that I had.
Yeah.
So then I discovered photography while I was traveling through South America. And I came back from that trip and I retrained and I made the leap. And I was a photographer for 15 years. And by the end of my career, I was working with a very high-end client. I worked with, foreign royalty and the Chelsea and Mayfair set and all that kind of stuff. And I think I just, it wore me down after a little while. It just wore me. It gave me great material, though. Great material. I had that experience I was looking for. And I just I was sitting, funnily enough, at the SWPP conference where I am launching the book as well. And I was sitting there with a friend, and I told her, I think I want to start writing romance stories about photographers. And she said, "Oh, you want to be the Jilly Cooper of photography?" And I was like, "Yes." And in that second, literally the title, the story, the characters popped into my head, and I was off. And that was it. And
That's
photography
awesome.
was forgotten.
Yeah, that was it. Threw the cameras in the bin. We're done here.
Yeah. I got the laptop.
I'm sure Julie will be over the moon that she's been used as a reference point here.
Yes, yeah.
And so you mentioned that you had written stuff before Shooters. Was it all romance, or did you kind of experiment with different stuff?
I actually wrote mostly fantasy.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's sort of my other genre that I really love. And I will probably visit at some point throughout my writing career. Oh God, though, I remember I was writing this story in university about these water goddesses and whatnot. And I let some of my friends read it. Mm-hmm. And I actually wrote the line, "She clammed up like an oyster." Mm-hmm. So, like I said, I needed some time to season.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think all authors do in a way. I think that's one of the why most authors are older is so much of it because it is just life experience. It's not necessarily the skill.
Many come to it in their 40s, 50s, even 60s, 70s, But I have actually another funny story. So when I was in university, I was taking this creative writing class, and I wanted to take another class with the same teacher, but I wasn't technically allowed, so I had to get his permission. And I went to him to fill in my form, and he said to me, I had written some stories in the past class about this wizarding school, funnily enough. And I went to him for the permission form, and he looked at me and he said, "Julia, I think you're going to write the great American novel one day, but please, no more of those wizarding stories." And he signed my form. Harry Potter came out the following year.
Oh.
It really taught me, you really need to just write what you want to write.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, because I've talked about this lots of times on the podcast. If you try and chase the trends, especially now, because I feel like now more than ever, the trends pass so quickly. They
change on a dime, they're just in and out.
You'll never, and the speed of publishing, you'll never have finished that book, submitted it to agents or probably publishers in time for it to come out within like that cycle. Trend. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Then you missed it, and then you're washed out before you even got started.
Exactly. You got to write what you want to write, and then that always comes through on the page as well. If you're excited about the thing you're writing, it'll come through in the words and the phrasing and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I will say it's funny that so you're romance writer. This first book, Shooters, is a rom-com. But also fantasy, from what I've heard from various people in publishing, including agents, is romantasy is a very big up and coming trend. So
it's not even up and coming. It's already arrived. It's arrived. Yeah, I mean, anyone on TikTok knows. Is definitely It's here. It's here.
Amazing. Are you very active on? Are you an active TikToker?
I am working on it. I got really into it. So yeah, I started getting into it last year, and it's quite intense.
Yes.
TikTok, and I joined all these Facebook groups about how to, get more followers, and then how to TikTok, for authors, and just the advice coming at you was one person would say one thing, the next person would say the other thing, and and it was just so much information, and I just had to take a break. I had to take a mental health break from it. But I'm getting back into it now. In fact, I've just been using TikTok to get loads of ARC readers for shooters.
Oh,
so
that's great.
So I got about 30 ARC readers through that. So, but I don't even know how many ARC readers are a good number of ARC readers.
I have no idea. I would imagine it's one of those things that probably varies wildly from book to book.
Yeah, exactly. And people don't know what an ARC reader is. It's somebody who reads an advanced copy of your book, and then the idea is that they will go and leave a review for you somewhere like Amazon, Goodreads, those sorts of places. But
I guess in theory, the more the better, right?
Yeah, the more the better. But I don't want to have too few. I think that's just my fear, like too few. I just trying to rack them up anyway. I've got 16 so far on Goodreads. So
okay, well, that sounds good. That sounds like a good number. I've seen lots of books with fewer reviews than that on Goodreads. So
okay, good.
If those are just the ARC reviews, then when the proper ones come out, then you'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's the hope, anyway.
That's the hope, definitely.
So you are using TikTok a bit. Let's get back onto actual publishing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You'd written bits and bobs, but had you written fantasy? You written fantasy. Had you written much romance before Shooters, or was Shooters your first? Like, I'm going to write romance.
Well, so I read a lot of romance as a teenager, and I did try my hand at writing some sex scenes, and I wrote them out, and I then I stuck the pages into an atlas in my bedroom, and forgot about it. And then I went traveling in Italy over the summer to see my relatives. And my stepmother had this urge to know exactly where in Italy I was.
Oh, no.
So up she went to my room, and she got the atlas out, and she found my pages, and she read them to my father as he was shaving.
Oh,
and
gosh.
I think we're all lucky he's still alive. Yeah. So that was my earliest foray into writing romance.
Yeah. But you've come a long way since then.
I've come a long way. I've learned not to use the word phallus in writing sex scenes at all. It's a bad word to use.
That's a bad habit you picked up from the medical copywriting.
Obviously, yes, yeah.
Too technical. That's the trick with that. You can't be too technical. So is Shooters the you're signed with Katie Greenstreet at Paper Literary. Is Shooters the book that you submitted and signed with?
Well, there's a story there. Yes, Katie was a fantastic agent, and she was so enthusiastic about the book, and she sent it out to all the publishers that we wanted to work with. And they all came back going, yeah, we love it. This is great, but we're not going to take it.
Yeah.
And the reasons that I got, there were two really. One was, we already have a wedding themed book on our list. So I guess it's like the Highlander. There can only be one. And then the other one that I got was that in the rom-com space, they were only looking to sign younger writers with a better chance of going viral on TikTok.
Wow, that is ageist.
It is completely ageist. I'm 48 years old, and I mean, I did look into it. I looked at, all the other romance authors that have gone viral, and they are all under 45 and mostly under 40. But I think the problem in publishing is, I was interviewing Joanne Harris once, and she said something that has really stuck with me. And it was that publishing doesn't know what they want until they have it, and they don't know what will sell until it's sold. And I feel like, you've got a bunch of people kind of feeling their way and guessing, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people in publishing, people who sit around that table where the decisions are made. And I've told them this story, and they said, yep, I've heard that one before. So it came as a surprise to absolutely nobody. And they said the reasons that really good books get turned away are just ridiculous. But there you have it. And I guess there's only so many books that can be published, but thank God for self-publishing.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing. Because I'm really actually glad that I've gone the self-publishing route, because I think I have a degree in marketing. I ran my own business for 15 years. I like having control over how my brand is sort of put out there. And self-publishing gives me that control. And having spoken with a lot of friends of mine who are traditionally published, there's a lot of frustration that I've heard from them about, like, oh, I've put this book out there, but then they don't put any marketing spend before it. So their book is just out there with nobody buying it. And they don't feel like they themselves have the power to market it, without checking things with the department and whatnot. So I think that doing it myself is just giving me that freedom. I think I would have gotten frustrated with publishing house marketing teams, because, I mean, I can't talk about everything that I'm doing, but I've got some amazing things coming up for the launch of this book. And I just probably wouldn't have been able to do any of them if I were signed under a traditional contract. So,
yes. Yeah, because you'd have to sort of run things up the chain of command and get sign off from various
and one
different
reason
people.
I work for myself is because I make a very bad employee. So yeah, I like being in control of that. But the marketing is intense.
Yeah, it's basically full time, right? You're becoming a marketer for yourself.
Oh, you are completely. I wake up at 5 a.m. to write, and then it's because I know that that's the only time that I will have in the day to sit down and put pen to paper, so to speak. And then, because I've got 2 young children as well, 6 and 11, and yada, yada, yada. And then the marketing for this and the podcast as well. I mean, I have a lot on my plate.
Yeah. Was there a lot of sort of pre kind of prep learning stuff that you needed to do, that you wanted to do, I guess, going into self-publishing?
Well, God, I feel like I've done a degree. There's just so many decisions you have to make. Do I go wide? Do I go exclusive with KU? All kinds of things that you need to decide for yourself. But you come up with a strategy. I wrote a marketing plan. I'm a big believer in marketing plans.
Yeah.
And just slowly, I'm doing what I can do. There's only so much that I can do, and I've had to accept that.
Yeah.
myself. But it is intense.
What would you say to someone who was thinking about self-publishing and sort of from a very starting point, say, like, where should I begin? What's the first thing that I need to figure out, understand in self-publishing?
Well, definitely the first thing you need to decide is where you're going to publish it. So there's 2 ways. There's wide and there's narrow, I guess let's call it. Wide is when you allow loads of different publishers to have it, like Kobo, Apple, Google, blah, blah, blah. And narrow is when you would just go through Amazon.
Okay. What's the benefit of just going through Amazon?
Well, you don't have an audience yet.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're trying to build an audience. And if you go into Kindle Unlimited, then, you get paid on how many pages people read in Kindle Unlimited. So it's an income, that's first and foremost. But also, you're just getting it out to a wider audience. However, the downfall of that is that you're not in control of that audience. So Amazon is, they have all the details. You don't get any of those. You don't know who's buying your book, and you can't really communicate with them. So moving forward, onto the second book, that's when I'm going to go wide, because then you have a lot more control over where your book is, and you can, people can interact with you more, and you can get your newsletter list going, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of that's my strategy anyway. I'm sure that there are people who stick with Kindle Unlimited through their whole career and do Facebook ads and Amazon ads and just run their career through that. But Amazon, you're kind of at the mercy of Amazon then. Yeah. And I don't know, that something about that doesn't sit 100% right with me.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean, because they could just change a single policy and then that could in
Exactly. They
some
could
way, shape or
change your
form hurt you.
royalty percentages, anything, and then that's that. But I've actually written, so I've been documenting all the marketing that I've been doing on my blog, on my website, so that other debut authors can look and just see. I mean, even traditionally published authors, go and have a look at all the stuff I've been doing, because there's a lot, and you can pick and choose the things that you actually want to do for your book. So.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And it's interesting to see with self-publishing sort of becoming a much more prevalent thing in the publishing landscape, I think. I mean, if you look at I don't know if anyone paid attention to this, but Penguin were trying to merge with Simon & Schuster, and that got blocked.
I think we were all paying attention to that.
but they made a lot of reference to like self-publishing and Kickstarters, talking about like Brandon Sanderson getting the biggest Kickstarter of all time. And like that was a huge sort of in defense of, you need to let big publishing like merge and get monopolies and stuff. So that kind of just tells you how big self-publishing is becoming. And then there's huge. All these sort of these like more disruptive sort of pseudo traditional publishers like Bookouture and stuff who are doing things which is like, it's kind of like traditional, but it's also kind of not also traditional. It's exciting. I think there's some cool new stuff coming out in publishing. Yeah,
there's a lot of flux right now, and I think it is a good time to self-publish. I've actually gotten involved with the Alliance of Independent Authors. I'm an ambassador for them. And the figures that they've sent me from studies that have been done, there really is, like, if you look at the ratings of traditional and self-published books online, there's like the tiniest of differences, both at the high end and at the low end.
That's true.
So, and there is definitely a snobbery out there about self-publishing. I've heard, oh God, this is the thing, being on Twitter, you hear, not Twitter, sorry, TikTok. You hear a lot of stories, there was one lady who said she went into a talk with a traditionally published author, and he said that if you're self-published, you're not published, you're just in print.
Wow, that's the thing is, I think where it comes from, and this is, I'm just kind of, and I know it used to be very frowned upon to be self-published, but I think it's because people imagine it's like when you self-publish, they're thinking, oh, you're just writing a first draft, you haven't got a clue what it is, and you literally just put it straight on Amazon. But so like what they're kind of not realizing is, yes, that can happen, but also there's nowadays you can pay, you can have an editor, a professional editor who's worked at lots of different publishing houses. You can pay a freelance artist to do an incredible cover piece. You can get all the copywriters, you can get, what all the stuff that a publishing house has and like does for the actual, I'm just talking about the book itself, the quality of the book. Yeah. You can do all of that very like freelance on an individual like basis, and there's also companies that provide that whole service to you. Completely. And I mean, if anyone out there is thinking of being self-published, definitely go along to the Alliance of Independent Authors website, because the amount of support and information that is in there is, you don't need anything else. Yeah, and there's a Facebook group. If I have a question, I go in and I ask it, and somebody who's published 100 books, I don't know, they'll come on and they'll answer it for me. So it's great. And also, I mean, I'm also a member of the Romantic Novelists Association, which again is, if you're whatever genre you're writing in, try to join an association that is related to it, because there's lots of support and help in there as well. Yeah, the RNA are great. I've done lots of interviews with members of the RNA and worked with them through some of their award shows and stuff. And they are one of the sort of best, most supportive genre-based associations, I guess. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, speaking of RNA, romance, you're writing romance. You've just confessed that you're working on something new, which you're going to go wide instead of tall. Is it going to be more romance, a similar kind of theme? Well, yeah, it's actually a trilogy. Okay.
So Shooters is book one. The second one is called F-Stop, which is another photography phrase, but it also kind of has another,
Yep.
which I won't say. And then the last one is called Exposure. Well, working title is Exposure, but that's book three. So I'll get those three sort of out of the way and published. And then I've got some other ideas that still take place in that same universe. But then I've got other ideas as well that I am keen to explore. So we'll see.
It sounds like your fantasy roots are kind of showing their heads with the way that you've structured this romance trilogy universe.
Yeah, my universe. Yes, exactly.
The Marvel universe better watch out.
Yeah, exactly. Shooters is coming for you.
Would you? I mean, we did touch on it earlier, but once you finish with this trilogy, which is rom-com, do you think you'll ever go back to something like fantasy, maybe a different genre, maybe a different age group?
Oh, definitely. I don't know about age group, but definitely different genres. I just think, it's difficult because when you're building a self-published career, you kind of need to give the audience what they're expecting from you.
Yeah.
But by that same token, I mean, romance readers are some of the most widely read readers out there. And, if I write something that it's a little bit more women's fiction or literary fiction, I think that there'll still be an audience. My audience will still read that. So we'll give it a go. We'll see where I land.
Yeah, I mean that's also the beauty of romance, and I know romance isn't often frowned upon genre, which is totally unjustified because I feel like I write fantasy. I'm writing fantasy right now. That's the current manuscript I'm working on. But just like there's a big romance plot, like subplot that runs through the whole thing.
That's great.
Like romance is in so many stories that people just kind of overlook, and then they sort of look down their nose and be like, "Oh, you're just reading romance, or you're writing romance."
Well, and often, it's that romantic thread that is the one that really hooks the reader.
Yeah,
and keeps them turning the pages. So romance is everywhere. I don't understand the snobbery towards that either.
No, it doesn't make sense.
No, but people they like to feel superior about something. Whatever.
It is what it is.
Exactly.
And with that, I think that brings us to what is always the final question, which is one that I'm sure that you have asked and thought about many, many times through on your own podcast, Two Lit Chicks. And that is, Julia, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book would you take with you?
Now, I think that you're probably going to tell me this isn't allowed, but I looked it up on Amazon and you can get this as a single volume. Okay. But I was going to say Lord of the Rings.
You can get it as a single volume?
You can get it as a single volume. I mean, I'm so lucky that when the ship went down, I happened to have that with me. And when I washed up on the island, I was clutching it as a flotation device. I think Lord of the Rings.
How many pages is that?
That's a lot of pages. That's a lot of pages. Like I could probably also kill food with that.
You could hunt with it.
Yeah.
You could make traps.
So it's a very practical choice as well. So
that's great, and I am fascinated to see how big that book is. I'm going to look it up when we're done. But I mean, Lord of the Rings always a classic. The grandfather of fantasy in many, many ways. Nice to see you going for your fantasy roots there.
Yeah, well, it gets the imagination going. So
yes, of course it does. Well, thank you so much, Julia, for coming on the podcast and talking about your new book and the things that you've been doing and just sharing your experience. It's been really great chatting with you.
Great. Thank you for having me on.
And for anyone wanting to keep up with what Julia is doing, you can follow her on Instagram and Twitter at Julia Boggio, or on TikTok at Julia Boggio Writer. Shooters is out and available for you to buy as of this going live. So what are you waiting for? Go get it. Of course, check out Julia's podcast, Two Lit Chicks, where Julia and Edward interview authors about the books that changed their lives. It's really interesting stuff, and I definitely recommend it. To make sure you don't miss an episode of this podcast, follow along on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook for ad-free episodes and some exclusive benefits. Head over to the Patreon, and for more bookish discussion, check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones, and Other Tropes. Thanks again to Julia for coming on the show, and thanks to everyone for listening. We'll catch you in the next episode.